Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm here now with the chair of the URI Journalism Department and very good friend, John Pantalone. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Rachel, it's so nice to be with a former student. This is the first time I think I've done any radio or visual stuff with a former student.
We're here to rep the Harrington School.
Why not?
So tell us a little bit about journalism at URI. You've been a pillar of the program for so long now. Tell us a little bit about how the program has changed just in your time there.
Wow, it's changed a lot because the field of journalism has changed so much. We're doing things in multimedia fashion now because very few people are getting jobs in journalism where they can do just one kind of reporting. So all of our students are going through the program with multimedia instruction at a basic level, and then some of them are doing that in a more refined way in higher level classes. And we were just able to hire a new faculty member who is, I would say, an expert at this point in multimedia. He's a really gifted documentary filmmaker and is really up on all of the latest technology. So we're really hoping he can help us get more of that going on in some of the upper level classes because it'll be great for the students.
Is it hard as an educator to keep up? I mean, even as being in the field, sometimes it's hard to keep up with what are the latest trends and social media trends, and we're not using that anymore. Is it hard to stay abreast of that?
Yes, yes, especially for somebody my advanced age and background. I'm a newspaper guy. I've been in newspapers, since I was first out of school, and so all of the technological stuff that's happened has been difficult for me to keep up with. But some other younger faculty are the ones who are really on top of it, and I do the best I can. I'm usually 2 steps behind whatever the trend might be. So but the department itself, with the help of those younger faculty and some other folks in the Harrington School and other departments in the Harrington School, are really helping everybody move, sort of in time with the changes. Although it's really hard to keep up because things change really quickly.
That's true.
Made a reference to social media, and I'm beginning to get the feeling that people are Twittered out, and that might be in part because of things going on in Washington. But some of that has calmed down a lot, and my personal feeling about that is it's a good thing if it does. So we'll see what happens. I mean, every time I think I know what's going on, something else new comes along. So
it's the same for all of us. It's hard to keep up.
It is, yeah.
But in some ways, though, it's good to have those firm foundations that have really stayed the same, because one of the big debates I remember having in school was, well, isn't anyone with a camera and access to a WordPress account a journalist? And of course, those of us in the field always say no. Yeah. But it's important to learn those foundational tenets that everyone has to hold on to, and it's important to remember those as we use social media, and there's so much discussion of what's real news and what's fake news. So it's good to stay true to those.
Absolutely, and that's the emphasis in our program. We're incorporating a lot of the new technologies and the new formats, and the technology is actually giving reporters an opportunity to be more creative in different ways of getting their stories told. But the bedrock skills are still absolutely necessary, and so we emphasize those from when students first get to the university, and we continue to emphasize them as they go through the program, and those are real basic reporting skills, basic writing skills, and ethical basics as well. So when somebody goes through the program, we'd like them to be prepared for the multimedia world, rather, that they're in, multicultural world as well. But we're maybe even more concerned that they have really solid reporting and writing skills. And I think that's what sets trained professional journalists apart from, I don't want to call people hobbyists, but people who aren't trained in professional journalists. We got, enormous problems with, credibility and trust, especially now that the press have become kind of one of the president's favorite kicking objects. He really, is attacking the press regularly, and fortunately, I think though people have started fighting back, including the public. I mean, one of the encouraging things to me is that subscriptions to the New York Times have increased tremendously over the past year or so, and I think people are getting more of a sense of the importance of news media, in part because of some of the things that are happening in Washington.
So speaking to that a little bit, along with the importance of those ethical foundations that you mentioned, where do you think we are right now with the whole discussion of what's real and what's fake, and is the press the enemy of the people? That's kind of been the rhetoric lately, and Facebook has been talking a lot about cracking down on fake news sites and sites that advertise themselves as news. And where do you think we are?
Well, I think we're in a very confusing place. Just yesterday, the story emerged that Facebook had discovered a bunch of fraudulent accounts that were posting on Facebook and Instagram and buying ads designed to influence the 2018 election. So that kind of stuff is going on all the time. This is one of the problems, I think, with social media in general. It's just really difficult for people to know whether what they're seeing is real or not real, or true or not true.
That's true. It gives everyone an equal platform.
Yes, right. I mean, technically, I suppose you can put anything you want on social media. The problem, and it's so different from, pre-social media days, the pre-internet days, the problem now is once it starts getting in that mill, it just keeps expanding. And frequently people are operating and making decisions based on false information or flat out lies. So it's a problem, but what we try to emphasize in the program when we're teaching students and non-majors as well, is that it's best if you find a legitimate, tested news source that you feel you can trust and that you don't feel is really playing political games. It's difficult, but there are plenty of them out there, and I think people are moving more in that direction. I think they're tired of all of the bashing and the politicking around the news media.
And when you say building trust, what can journalists do? Going back to those ethics you mentioned back at the beginning, what can a journalist do?
Just do the job the right way. Do your research, collect your facts, double check them, make sure that what you're planning to tell people is true. Stand by what you're doing, and don't be swayed by different political winds that might come along. One of the things that I've found interesting in some of the reading that I've done over the summer so far is just reminding me of how often in the country's history the press and the president have been at odds. They're always adversaries to one degree or another. But you can look at the Vietnam era with Lyndon Johnson, the whole Nixon era, pre-Watergate and post-Watergate. In some cases, Nixon was actually even more extreme than Trump has been in attacks on the press. But when people are in situations like those particular presidents and this current one, they're often looking for somebody to blame for whatever problems they seem to be encountering, and the news media are easy targets. They always have been.
Of course, because in some ways you could argue that the press shouldn't be that aligned with government, because the whole point of press is to be a watchdog.
Yes, and everybody seems to get that, and some people don't like it, and obviously people who are in political power at any given time especially don't like it. And that's why they often go on the attack. And it's been interesting. I've read a couple of different books about what's going on currently in Washington, and a couple of others about history of news media. And so there's a great deal of information in that reading about this very subject, you know, that how frequently, going back to George Washington, how frequently presidents and the press have been at, not just at odds, but real out-and-out adversaries. And the press is always there, and the presidents come and go. So that might be something else for people to remember.
So what would you, in that vein, what would you say to a student who is considering becoming a journalist? What would you say to them to convince them of the importance?
Well, the primary message is that it is a proud profession. You know, we like to make sure that students are proud of what they're going into, and that it's critical to the best function of democracy. And it's absolutely necessary because the general public does not have the time or the wherewithal to do their own watchdogging, although some folks try to do that. And it's the responsibility of the press to keep an eye on government or any other aspect of society that has an effect on the public. This is, it's easy for me to say, but it is a really important function in society. And that's why I think it's really dangerous for political figures of whatever party or whatever philosophy to be attacking the press as a way of distracting people, because it does diminish credibility and trust, and it also has an effect on democracy. The other interesting thing I read about this summer, historical point, is that during that period from post-Kennedy assassination right through Nixon and Watergate, and then actually into the 1980 election with Ronald Reagan, public apathy about government was like so high that presidents got elected by just over a quarter of the eligible voters. We should be trying to do a little better than that, and the press's job is to encourage people to participate by making sure that they're informed. So, yeah, we tell students that all the time, and I think people who are serious about the profession take it to heart and try to proceed according to that idea.
Great, very, very sage words of wisdom, and help
Sage
us
and
all
wisdom.
feel better.
These are references to my age, I'm sure.
Thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us
I'm
today.
glad to be
We
here
really
with you.
do appreciate it,
Okay.
and we're very interested to see what happens with the upcoming
it's fun.
election and what's next.
It's actually fun for for reporters to be in an atmosphere like that, and it's kind of fun for people who are teaching it to see what happens. And
See what's
going to
happening.
happen. Absolutely.
And I'm sure it will continue to unfold.
Absolutely. It's not static, that's a fact.
Well, thanks so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
John Pantalone, Chair of Journalism at URI. Thanks so much.
You're
We'll be
welcome.
right back with our next guest here on Go Local Live.